Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Wednesday, February the 4th, 2026. Today, the planet Uranus comes to a standstill. It is stationary direct, so it has been going backwards for some time, and now it is changing direction, and so we do have to look at this. I think it is potentially an important event. But first of all, I want to consider the astrology and the I Ching for today, which is Wednesday, February the 4th. So here is the chart for today, set for noon, New York time. So as far as what is happening, by the way, don't forget to like and subscribe. As far as what is happening, we've got the moon in late Virgo. So the moon, New York time, sort of 21 degrees Virgo. The moon is making a sextile to Jupiter. That sextile to Jupiter probably going to be more important sort of at the beginning of the day, more important perhaps if you're in Australia or New Zealand, in Australia and New Zealand than the Americas, but still we've got the moon and Jupiter in signs which get on pretty well with one another, Virgo and Cancer. There's not a great deal of conflict between those two signs, and those two signs, Virgo and Cancer, do have a sextile relationship. So I think that Moon-Jupiter sextile should be helpful, though we also have Sun semisquare Neptune. So the Sun at 15 degrees Aquarius, still pretty close to the 45-degree aspect with semisquare to the semisquare to the Aries point it's semisquare Neptune. So Sun semisquare Neptune, the Sun is our vitality, it's our self, and when it comes up against Neptune, it can be somewhat debilitating. We might think everything is clear and that we understand what's going on, but maybe not. Maybe there is a bit of delusion out there, and we might think that one thing is true, but actually something else might be the case. So we mustn't necessarily believe what we see in front of us, though on the plus side, Sun semisquare Neptune can be a very imaginative aspect. And talking about imagination, we have a sextile between Venus and Chiron. Venus at 22 Aquarius, Chiron at 23 Aries. Is it imaginative? Well, it can be imaginative. I mean, Venus is a planet of art, and how we respond aesthetically to the world around us. And if it's sextile Chiron, we might be in tune with something which allows us perhaps to be a bit different. So from an artistic perspective, we might interpret the world in a slightly different and unusual way, and that might also be reflected by our choice of friends and who we want to hang out with. Venus sextile Chiron is perhaps rather unique. It has a unique approach, and perhaps the usual crowd aren't especially interesting. So a bit of social variety might be in order with Venus sextile Chiron. But the most important event is Uranus coming to a standstill. So when we talk about planets going direct and retrograde, we're looking at it from a perspective of the Earth. It's kind of how it seems from the Earth's perspective. In reality, planets do not go backwards as they go around the sun. They just appear to go backwards. But in many ways, astrology is an Earth-orientated system. It's geocentric. And so Uranus is the planet of maybe sort of revolutions, of change. And so with Uranus going stationary direct, Uranus is very much in focus, because it really, it is at a standstill. It's the power of its revolutionary energy is at a maximum. So there's nothing weak about a planet going stationary direct, and it may be that we're really starting to focus on how our world is changing in good ways and bad ways. And so, we're thinking of, what's been happening recently. Yeah, things are up in the air. Things that a lot of people have taken for granted have been sort of ripped away from them, and the political fabric is under pressure, particularly in the UK. I mean, the UK, the Epstein files are affecting the UK in many respects more from the US, because it really is about people's sort of political judgment here. And I'm thinking particularly of Peter Mandelson. I should cover Peter Mandelson. He's a Libran, but I was going to look at him today, but maybe I'll look at him tomorrow. But Peter Mandelson was giving Epstein confidential information, and this is a major scandal, which is certainly upsetting the political fabric. But it's what's going on with Uranus Direct, and Uranus is direct are fairly close to the fixed star Algol, so we need to really think about this moment. When Uranus's power, is at a maximum, and so that's why I want to look at Uranus Direct, later in this video. We also have a biquintile between Venus and Jupiter. Venus is 144 degrees from Jupiter, and so as far as what that means, that's 2/5 of a circle. That may say that something about our attitude, or what our attitude could be. The quintiles, biquintiles are about what we are trying to put out. It may not be immediately easy to be optimistic, but perhaps if we make the effort, we can change things round, and we can start to see that things aren't necessarily as bad as they seem. Okay, I'm not saying things are bad, but if you do make a conscious effort and you are worried about the way things are moving, that conscious effort could make a big difference. So that's the picture for New York. If we set the chart for Sydney, Australia, for noon, February the 4th in Sydney, as a representative of Australia, New Zealand, East Asia, the moon is a bit earlier in the sign. Moon is 12 degrees Virgo, so the moon is applying to a sextile of Jupiter, and so the fortunate energy of that moon sextile Jupiter just is getting stronger as the day progresses. If you are in Australia and New Zealand, so maybe in Australasia, just things are going to be just a little bit easier than if you're in, say the Americas. I mean, the moon is important, and one does have to look at what is the moon applying to, and it's definitely here. You can see its moon is applying to that sextile to Jupiter. So maybe if you make the effort, particularly with that Venus biquintile Jupiter, you can really make things happen, and you can take something that might on the surface seem difficult and really turn it round. I think all of us can benefit from this, but I just think in Australia and New Zealand, I think that moon sextile Jupiter may be particularly fortunate. And then there is the heliocentric view, putting the sun at the center of the solar system, and that Mars-Pluto square still there. Geocentrically, the Mars-Pluto square is sort of breaking up, but heliocentrically, it hasn't gone away, and so the usual. I just say the usual stuff about it. That with Mars conjunct Pluto, people want to have an influence. They want to perhaps be in control, and that's a lot about what we're trying to do. And Venus is additionally making, what's Venus doing? Venus is separating from a square to Uranus. That Venus square Uranus, Venus in early Pisces, square Uranus in Gemini, that aspect is starting to weaken. It's not as strong as it used to be, but still that might say something about how we relate to other people, and it perhaps links with the fact that geocentrically we've got Venus sextile Chiron. So for some of us it might be a time to make some changes socially, and perhaps new and interesting people can really be helpful, certainly make our day more exciting. But if people are too interesting, well, I mean, they could cause problems. But I mean, overall, I don't think the heliocentric picture is especially dramatic. Mercury is trine Jupiter. Mercury at 24 Pisces, trine Jupiter at 22 Cancer. So that trine, perhaps it links with the biquintile, geocentric biquintile between Venus and Jupiter. I mean, there can be a certain optimism today. So even though Uranus stationary direct seems quite disturbing, that disturbance is perhaps neutral, and it depends how we see it. It depends how we perceive it. And if we do make a special effort to be optimistic, we can, turn things round and maybe even take advantage of an unexpected event. So that's the broad picture. Now I want to turn to the 12 signs. So these are my forecasts for the 12 signs for today, which is Wednesday, February the 4th, 2026. Aries. So Uranus is stationary direct, and one way of looking at Uranus stationary direct is to really see how it impacts each of the 12 signs. Now, I don't think that Uranus going stationary direct is necessarily a huge deal for you. I don't think it's something that is definitely going to have an impact on you. If it does have an impact on you, it could perhaps be about money. So, over the last few years, well, Uranus does stay in a sign for 7 years, or something like that. And so Uranus is coming to the end of its time in Taurus, and Taurus is an earth sign, and so for you Aries, that can be about money, and Uranus stationary direct could be about realizations you have about money, which are kind of a bit ongoing. It says something about the last 7 years, and you're seeing how things are developing, and you kind of thought you'd made some progress, and perhaps Uranus stationary direct makes you look back at what for example you were doing 7 years ago, and you're thinking, well, when would 7 years be? That would be 2019, and or something like that, and you're thinking, well, what progress have you made, and what progress have you not made? And there have been changes, but how have you managed these changes? And it just could be that as Uranus goes stationary direct, as it prepares to leave Taurus, you start to think about what you haven't done and what changes you need to implement. And these changes are not necessarily about, changing your bank or making investments or disinvesting yourself. Maybe not. I'm not giving any financial advice here. It just could be about your attitude, and maybe your attitude hasn't been perfect, and your attitude to money needs to change in some respects. Again, I'm not saying anything is wrong. I'm just trying to work out what Uranus going stationary direct might mean for you. And in general, Aries, thinking particularly about today, I think that it's important to take it easily, not feel that you have to be in a rush. Things have to be sorted out at a slow pace, and one thing must follow after another. And the better organized, the better prepared you are, the better. And so I think that is something you can do. And I don't think, Aries, that you should be desperate to be, original, for example, or do things completely differently. You've got to ground yourself, and you make sure that the fundamentals, are all in order. And once you've done that, you can sort of move on. You can move to the next stage. And I think you are helped by the fact that the moon is sextile Jupiter. I think that allows you to just concentrate on the things that do matter, and you can do it with a degree of power and with a sense of purpose. You know what's important, and even though Neptune is in Aries, you're still perhaps getting used to Neptune being in Aries. The Sun making a semisquare to Neptune, might mean that you're aware of how you could be tripping yourself up, how you could be deluding yourself. But I think the fog will clear, and you'll see where you should be going and what you should be doing. And if you've got two choices, the safe choice and the dramatic choice, well, I would probably err on the side of safety. Taurus. Uranus is stationary direct, and this probably has an impact on you. I mean, don't forget that Uranus is moving through your sign. Uranus is at 27, 28 of your sign. So it's getting ready for that final move through the last couple of degrees of Taurus as it prepares to move into Gemini. And so this might create in you a degree of hurry. You might just think that things need to be changed. That you have been trying to create change, and if you are a Taurus, change can sometimes be difficult, and it can be disappointing how little you change. I'm saying this, by the way, as someone who has a Taurus rising, and with Taurus rising or Sun in Taurus, you can be just quite concentrated on the way things are, and change. It doesn't always happen in a gradual way. It can either be non-existent, or it can be very sudden and very disruptive. Especially when Uranus is moving through your sign, and now that Uranus is going stationary direct, that Uranus energy is very, very focused. It's really concentrating on what is important to you. Okay, this would be especially the case if you're late Taurus. If you've got an ascendant, I don't know, of from 25 to 29 Taurus, last 5 degrees of Taurus, or if you've got you were born in late May. So I think that would in those two cases relating to your ascendant and your sun, that would make Uranus stationary direct especially powerful. But I think there is a positive side to it. It's a chance to be different. If you felt that you didn't get it together, that you didn't have a chance, now you can get it together, and you're going to be helped by the moon's movement through Virgo. So the moon in Virgo is starting to make a trine to Uranus, and so moon in Virgo, that is a good sign for the moon to be in. It's a very creative place, and you might just decide that you do want to do things differently. And the trine to Uranus can really help you to just stir things up and really project yourself. And so if you want to create change, I think you can, and you can, because the moon is trine Uranus. The moon has just made a sextile to Jupiter, then it makes a trine to Uranus. It the moon almost sort of brings Jupiter and Uranus together. Because of those two aspects, you can engineer change in a way that is quite fast, but is manageable. And you don't have to really go out on a limb. So if something isn't right, you want to make changes, yeah, I think you can. And part of your attitude to change is, also about your attitude to society. And you're thinking, what is going on around you in society? How are things developing, and how are you responding to it? Because we are at a time when things are happening very, very quickly, and so what's going on. And I think perhaps, Taurus, you have a good understanding of how the business cycle is developing, how the economy is developing, or how it's not developing. Where the whole thing is going. You can see it all. It is clear, and you may be in a position where you can act first. So, in other words, you can see where things are going, and that's the time to think about it. And I don't know. I was listening to a city council meeting yesterday. I attended. In every 2 weeks in this city, there's a city council meeting, and I was listening to the city councillors making their comments, and one of the city councillors was saying how this area, the Puget Sound area, had lost 13,000 jobs recently, which kind of goes against the trend. Apparently many parts of America, things at place are not losing jobs, but there's something going on regionally here, and it's that kind of thing what we're talking about. You can perhaps see a local trend. Maybe not about job losses, but just something you notice, Taurus, that other people don't notice. And I don't know whether the city councillor was a Taurus or not. He looks pretty Taurian. He probably isn't, but he was pointing this out, and maybe you notice these things. You read the papers. You can see in front of you what's happening, and because of that, and it may not be a negative trend, it just might be something you see, you then respond, and you start to position yourself to take advantage of something which is only just happening, but sooner or later it will really manifest yourself. And by positioning yourself correctly, that could be putting yourself in a position where you can take advantage of a new trend, or you can protect yourself from some ongoing collapse, get out of a way of trouble, perhaps economic trouble. I think that's something that you can do. So, try to be sensitive to the business cycle, and perhaps try to be sensitive to what's going on in your local economy. Gemini. The fact that Uranus is going stationary direct, is it important? I mean, I think that Uranus going stationary direct, it is certainly a reminder that it won't be long before Uranus moves into your sign. I think Uranus goes into Gemini in April, so it's pretty close. So you just got a couple of months left before Uranus returns to your sign, and it stays in your sign for quite a few years. So that's certainly something to look forward to. And right now, when Uranus is going stationary direct in Taurus, it's more working on an unconscious level. You're aware of change, and the question is, how are you picking up on it? I mean, you may be picking up on it through your dreams, for example, or just your general feelings, or maybe you have your insights, and you notice things which tell you that nothing is quite as it used to be, and so. So things are certainly happening below the surface, and they're very real. But sometimes being a Gemini, you can miss out on them. You just look the other way. You kind of can half see it, but you don't fully see it. And because you only half see it, you don't act on it. It just becomes theoretical, and that can be a tragedy of Gemini. you notice something, you become aware of something, and you spend ages thinking about it. You think about it, and you just do nothing about it. And I think that would be a shame. So it is possible, Gemini, that with Uranus going stationary direct, there is a call to action. And it's a call to action that you might just decide to ignore, or just make it theoretical. You analyze it, and you don't do anything. And when the thing actually happens, you're sad because you missed an opportunity. You missed an opportunity for gain. You missed an opportunity to get out of trouble. So if you find yourself thinking fast and furiously about something, don't just abstract it. Consider the possibility that this is real and that you may actually, have to do something about it. Now, as far as the specifics of today are concerned, I think that, like yesterday, you're probably not inclined to do very much. I think that you would rather, stay where you were. Maybe not. Maybe it's not quite as bad as yesterday. I think today you're probably sort of more relaxed than you were yesterday. You feel sort of a bit less pressured, but actually moving could be hard. And there's a bit of treacle around. It might at times feel that you are treading through treacle, and one reason for that, it might be your own feelings. You have a lot of feelings. You maybe have regrets. You have feelings which you're not entirely happy about, but they're there. And part of you, Gemini, would like to sort of wallow in these feelings. Doesn't sound very Gemini, does it? But every Gemini has their moments when the emotional side of things gets a little bit out of control. I mean, we're not talking about emotions like anger or anything like that. It's the more sloppy side of emotions. Is just getting stuck. And I'm not saying it absolutely must happen, but I'm just saying that it could happen. Is it a disaster? I don't think so, but it would be better if you could somehow find a way of utilizing the day. I mean, the moon does make a sextile to Jupiter, and so with that moon sextile Jupiter, Gemini, there are certainly useful things you can do. It might be a good time to be thinking about money. Maybe there's an opportunity, a financial opportunity. Maybe it's sitting there and it's waiting for you to take advantage of it. And it's just right in front of you, I think. Now, you could take advantage of it, but you might at the same time find that you're just thinking about other things. Cancer. Like yesterday, the moon is moving through Virgo, and the moon is making a sextile to Jupiter. Now, this moon sextile Jupiter is going to be strongest in Australia, Asia, perhaps Europe. I don't think it's going to be quite so strong in the Americas, but that doesn't mean to say it's an influence. It's not an influence. If you are in the Americas, perhaps you're going to have to get up early if you want to take advantage of this moon sextile Jupiter to its sort of maximum extent. But I wouldn't worry about it too much. It's there for you, and I think that the influence of this moon of this sextile between Moon and Jupiter is largely fortunate. If whatever you put your mind to, I think should work pretty well. I don't see any real problems here, and I don't think there's going to be a great deal of pressure. So Cancer, whatever it is that you want to do, I think that you really can go ahead with it, and I think that you can, in the process, be pretty successful. And it's okay. Again, it's not dramatic, but whatever you're doing, it should be relatively easy, and that might just be all there is to say. Now, Jupiter, by the way, of course, is in Cancer, is in your sign. It is making a biquintile to Venus. So Venus and Jupiter are 144 degrees apart, and so with that Venus-Jupiter biquintile, it's quite possible that through an effort of will, you can make things even better. So if you feel that things are not 100% perfect, you can make the change. And if you make a special effort to show your positivity, not always easy, because part of you, you want to keep things to yourself, and there are things you don't want to reveal, but if you can just show some enthusiasm, even if you're not entirely comfortable showing enthusiasm, and if you can make that effort, then I think that other people will pick up on it. So, do try to be positive, particularly if you're dealing with people who are not inclined to do anything, who, people who have a slightly negative attitude in that kind of situation. I think that, a bit of humor and positivity can really help move things along. Additionally, we have Uranus going stationary direct. I'm trying to go through all the 12 signs and sort of briefly mention how Uranus going stationary direct might influence these 12 signs. I think for you, Uranus going stationary direct could represent, a bit of a surprise. Not, I don't think, a surprise that is happening externally, rather a change of attitude on your part. And it does reflect the process of Uranus moving through Taurus. I mean, Uranus has been moving through Taurus for quite a long time. I mean, Uranus stays in a sign for 7 years. And so with Uranus going stationary direct, it might just be a revelation about what you want, what you really want, and I'm not thinking about short-term ambitions, status, money, promotion, being taken seriously. It goes beyond that. It's more about what you're looking for in your life, what you're hoping for, what you hope to achieve. It's maybe a sort of a longer term thing. Maybe there were things that you were trying to get together, over the last 7 years, maybe, and now it's just becoming much clearer, and it's perhaps about your happiness and your well-being, and wanting your kind of life, not the kind of life that is imposed upon you by society, but the kind of life that just is in accord with who you are. And maybe with Uranus going stationary direct, there might be a revelation. It suddenly becomes clear. And if it suddenly becomes clear, then over the next couple of months, as Uranus moves through the last few degrees of Taurus, you might just have a chance to do something about it and make the necessary changes. And in the process, you will just know you're going in the right direction, and so you have a chance to make yourself feel happier and sort of more comfortable in what you are doing. Leo. The big aspect for Leos is probably the Sun making a semisquare to Neptune. So the Sun is, of course, at around 16 degrees Aquarius. Neptune is at 0 degrees Aries. And so this Sun semisquare Neptune, it's got to influence you because the Sun is your ruler. And so with the Sun semisquare Neptune, there may be just moments of uncertainty when you don't quite know what is happening, and you might be confused by what other people are saying, what they're creating, what they're telling you. It may be difficult to understand it all. And if you want to understand something, then it's going to be important that you look beyond the words. You need to get a broad vision. So you need to take a step back. Well, you need to take a step back unless you're standing on a cliff. But generally speaking, that's metaphorically. You at least need to take a step back and see the broader picture. And one reason why you might feel confused is because you're still getting used to Neptune being in Aries. Some of your ideas are changing. And they perhaps are changing quite quickly, and with Neptune moving into Aries, you see that things are not entirely straightforward, and you have your ideas, you have your beliefs, but your beliefs may be undermining, perhaps because your beliefs are in a process of change. And Sun semisquare Neptune could be that there are perhaps encounters, maybe with another person, which challenge your beliefs. And so that is a way in which Sun semisquare Neptune, could be working. Now, it might well be that this Sun semisquare Neptune, has a religious or spiritual angle. I mean, Neptune is a high-level collective planet. It's not about the personal. I think that's actually a reason why there's no way that Neptune can rule Pisces, for example. I mean, a lot of people say that Neptune rules Pisces. It doesn't. I mean, because Neptune is a collective planet. It's a collective energy. It's not about the personal. And so with Neptune making a semi-square to the Sun, it just might be about some collective or supernatural force having an impact upon you. And don't forget the Sun is in Aquarius. The Sun is in Aquarius it's in its detriment at the moment. So your ability perhaps to identify who you are, your sense of selfhood, may just be temporarily a bit weaker than usual. Now that sounds a bad thing, but it may actually be a good thing. Perhaps your boundaries are more porous than they have been of late, and so you're perhaps in a position where you are going to be more influenced than usual. You're going to be influenced by these high-level forces. And so if you start to feel something may be communicating with you, then it might be disconcerting, but you're being given knowledge. You're becoming part of something larger than yourself, and that can be daunting. And you can always get off, because sometimes it just becomes too much. If you come face to face with God, you go mad, isn't that right? So we're not talking about becoming face to face with God, but you go mad unless you're sufficiently elevated. So we're not talking about that, I don't think, but we are talking about you having the possibility of just being in contact with something larger than yourself. Now, on a completely different note, I think we do have Uranus stationary direct, and Uranus has been in Taurus on and off for quite a long time, 7 years. Okay, it did briefly go back into Gemini last year, but it's going to go into Gemini soon enough, in a couple of months' time. But with Uranus going stationary direct, Leo, that might say something about who you are, where you are, where you're going, and perhaps your ideas about your work and your ambitions. You're thinking that not everything is perfect, and you're perhaps been looking for some kind of change, some big change, and it's a change that you've been maybe struggling for a long time, maybe since 2019 or something like that, and you haven't quite got it together. But now that Uranus is stationary direct, perhaps it is coming together. And over the next few months, you can actually do something about it. And maybe now with Uranus stationary direct, you just have a vision about where you'd like to go, who you'd like to be, and who you want to develop into. I mean, it is perhaps about your ego development, and that might say something about your career, but it might say something about your broader ambition. So I think Uranus going stationary direct is a positive, but it could be quite challenging, because you start to see what you haven't achieved and what you need to achieve, and maybe at the same time you're also aware of something of a deadline. Okay, it's not written in stone, this deadline, but ideally you would sort it out before Uranus goes into Gemini, which I think Uranus goes into Gemini in April. Is it the end of April? Something like that. So Uranus going stationary direct might for you be a call to action. Virgo. Don't get sidetracked by your own feelings. It's always good to have feelings. I mean, of course, we all have feelings. Everything has feelings, doesn't it? I mean, I don't think there's any limit to what has a feeling. I mean, spiders have feelings. Dogs obviously have feelings. People have feelings. Everyone has feelings, and Virgos have feelings as well, obviously. But sometimes feelings can get in your way, particularly if they get stuck. And this could be a problem, right now. And you might dwell on a particular set of feelings, and you may not be able to sort of move beyond them. I mean, it's a temporary situation. I'm just talking about today, and you are perhaps so focused on perhaps the past, or perhaps regrets, or something you're annoyed about, and you can't move on, and you just find that it's easiest just to kind of do nothing, and to obsess. Not obsess in a crazy way, but in a way that is sufficient to be a distraction. And as a result, there is a possibility that you waste a lot of time, and you find that there are things that you would like to do, you could be doing, but you don't do them because you're just distracted. So maybe this is a situation where, Virgo, you need a little bit of discipline. You decide that something matters and you don't really want to do it. You'd rather just sort of drift, but you just go and do it. And I think that is that's almost certainly the right approach. And there's no reason, by the way, Virgo, that it should be a bad day. I mean, I'm just saying it could be a day that is spoilt, but it doesn't have to be spoilt. And the moon is in Virgo. The moon is making a sextile to Jupiter. That sextile to Jupiter, okay, it may be strongest if you're in Australasia, or maybe Europe and Asia. If you're in the Americas, that moon sextile Jupiter may be more of a feature of the very beginning of the day. But even then, I think that the moon sextile Jupiter is a positive. Moon in your sign, making a sextile to Jupiter in its, which is exalted, and so that does give you a certain amount of luck. If you're prepared to give things your best shot, you've got to try. You've got to make the effort, and it's perhaps important you don't become sort of too self-obsessed, and that perhaps relates to what I was saying right at the beginning, that your feelings might trip you up. Why would your feelings trip you up? Well, your feelings might trip you up because you're thinking too much about yourself. And if you spent some time thinking about other people's material, then you might get sidetracked, well, in a fortunate way. If you think about what you can do for others, then you're not going to be so worried about yourself and any sort of short-term issues that you might be thinking and feeling about. So do try to work out, what is going on around you, and doing something for another person, may not be such a bad idea. At the same time, we have Uranus going stationary direct. So the planet Uranus coming to a standstill in Taurus, in an Earth sign. And this might be about a revelation that isn't necessarily welcome. It could be a revelation about your overall stance, maybe your ideological stance, your philosophical stance, political, religious, and you look at some of the opinions that you've held on to tightly to, and they've been important to you. They've helped you make sense of the world, and you look at these opinions, things that you just taken for granted. And you look at them and you think, well, hold on, have you got it right? And actually, maybe they're in a process of change. I mean, so, from a political perspective, it's I don't know if politics is relevant, but, it's very easy to hold on to one's ideas through thick and thin. And then all of a sudden, one suddenly changes. I'm not advocating, by the way, any particular type of change. Different people change in different ways, and it just could be that you start to realize that some of your ideas, your fundamental ideas even, are not necessarily supported by the facts. And so with Uranus stationary direct, just consider the possibility that you have got it wrong from a philosophical or political point of view, or really perhaps a religious point of view. I mean, I know there's no such thing as right and wrong, by the way. It's something very subjective, and you have to think about it from your perspective and the way you are developing, as a person. We are all developing as people, and hopefully as we go through life, our ideas do change. That doesn't mean to say they have to dramatically change, but I think with Uranus going stationary direct, just consider that possibility. And additionally, you need to have the right stance here. I think it's important. You don't want to be in a situation where your fundamental ideas start changing, I don't know, next year, when you've already embarked upon something. Before you make absolute commitments, you need to know where you stand. You need to know what you believe in. So that's perhaps what you should be thinking about, not just today when Uranus is going stationary direct, but, over the next couple of months before Uranus moves into Gemini, because I think that's something you do need to prepare for, because, Virgo is a mutable sign, Gemini is a mutable sign. The period with Uranus moving through Gemini could be important, in terms of how you move forward in life, about your ambitions. But as far as ambitions are concerned, philosophy and ideas come first, then the ambitions. So sort out your stance and sort it out now, I think. Libra. There is not necessarily a huge amount going on, not at least in a relative sense. I mean, I know that the world is in a huge amount of flux, and things really are happening. For example, because of the Epstein files, the economy, and geopolitics, and but as far as you're concerned, Libra, you're not ready to really consider huge efforts. You don't necessarily want to do anything at all. And as far as you're concerned, it might be best to just bide your time, to see what is going on, and the best you can do perhaps is to just make sure that your little corner of the world is all in order, and that you know what's going on. And I don't think that you need to be tied up with all of the surrounding chaos. And so if you take that approach, maybe that's enough. But the moon is making a sextile to Jupiter, and I think that moon sextile Jupiter does allow you to do things which are useful perhaps in terms of your career or your ambitions. But whatever you're doing, I don't think that you have to be particularly open about it. You can work away at important tasks, in your own way, at your own pace, and that should be enough. Now, as far as Uranus is concerned, I've been talking a lot about Uranus going stationary direct, and I know that some astrologers have whole YouTube videos talking about how Uranus going stationary direct is going to impact all of the 12 signs. I could do that, but I don't think so. But I do want to kind of just make a few suggestions about how it might impact you. So Uranus goes stationary direct in Taurus. So with Uranus going stationary direct in Taurus, what are we thinking about? We're thinking about perhaps a revelation. I mean, that's what Uranus can be about. And we have to then ask, what is that revelation about? And so this revelation, it could be about something relatively simple, like money. And you kind of have a realization that the financial side of things is not necessarily as simple as you'd thought it was. And you start to appreciate that financially things are more complicated. It might just suddenly occur to you, just out of nowhere, that it wasn't as simple. And perhaps this realization covers, other people, how other people are behaving with money, how they're handling money. And you start to realize that it can have an impact on you. And the message here is you need to be more interested. And this revelation may be a culmination of things that have been going on, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years. Could have been going on for that length of time. And now that you see what is happening, or you are becoming aware of what is happening, you're thinking, well, what are you going to do? And that is a question perhaps for the next couple of months, because Uranus, having gone stationary direct, will move forward, and it will move into Gemini in a couple of months' time. And so in the next couple of months, it might be a good time to actually work on your revelations. Now that you see how things are, then you can actually start to do something about it. So that's a way of seeing it. It's simple in a way because it's just about money. I mean, there could be an emotional side to Uranus going stationary direct, and Libra as a sign has a reputation for being quite civilized, wanting things to be straightforward, not wanting unpleasantness. And with Uranus going stationary direct, you could just become aware of the rawness and power of your own feelings. And there may be nothing civilized about those feelings at all. There's no reason for them to be civilized. Why should feelings be civilized? That's not in their nature. And it might be a surprise, it might be a shock, but once you see what is going on and how your feelings are developing, then that gives you an idea perhaps about what needs to happen next. And by at least acknowledging the power of your feelings, then you're creating possibilities. and perhaps it's taking a powerful set of feelings and actually using them. And your feelings could be about many different things, and they may not just be about yourself and your personal life. They could also be about society, the way society is changing. And right now you're in a stationary direct. You could get real insights about the place you're living, the country you're living, the community you're living. For example, how the economy is working, and it really becomes obvious to you. I mean, you maybe can't all completely verbalize it, but you can see that things are changing. You can feel that things are changing, and perhaps if you've got those feelings, you have a chance to actually do something about it. And it may be that one of the challenges here is to take powerful feelings, indeed powerful insights, and bring them together and verbalize them to yourself, and that could be the basis of some sort of plan of action. Scorpio. Uranus is going stationary direct, and Uranus has been on and off in Taurus, your opposite sign, for the last 7 years or so. And so with Uranus going stationary direct, it really does perhaps emphasize the role of other people in your life. You perhaps go back over the last few years and you're thinking about how people have influenced you, how particular relationships have influenced you, and it just becomes clear in a way that may not be entirely easy, but it's better to know the truth. I'm not saying the truth is bad, by the way, but it's just better to know what's going on. It's better to just know who you're dealing with and how people have been behaving. I mean, this Uranus going stationary direct, well, it's going to have a particular impact on you if your ascendant is in sort of very late Scorpio, or if you're looking at these 12 signs from a perspective of the ascendant, or if you're born in late November. So, for example, if you're born, I don't know, if you're born in the last half of November, then I think that that would be particularly powerful. But I think all Scorpios are going to be influenced by this, and it could stir things up, and you might decide or realize that change is required. But your relationship to another person, or indeed not just another person, but to a group of people, has perhaps gone far enough, and you look back on the past and you're thinking, okay, you get it, and maybe over the next couple of months, while Uranus moves through the last couple of degrees of Taurus, you can actually put theory into practice as far as some of your relationships are concerned. But people will matter today specifically. The moon is still in Virgo. The moon is making a sextile to Jupiter, and this moon sextile Jupiter, it's a good aspect, and not everyone is a problem. In fact, some people may be really very useful, very helpful. They might just help you to understand things, and perhaps by talking to people, by relating to other people, you can have a better understanding about what is going on, and what is happening, and perhaps through another person you get a different view, and that might actually relate to Uranus going stationary direct. Uranus stationary direct, and it's not just about relationships changing, it's about being influenced by another person in a way you hadn't thought was possible. Remembering that Scorpio tends to be quite an independent-minded sign, doesn't like to be influenced by other people, but you realize that influence influence is something that often sort of cannot be avoided. Yet, don't feel, Scorpio, that you don't have any power. You have a lot of power. Heliocentrically, Mars, your ruler, is still making a conjunction to Pluto. The Mars-Pluto conjunction geocentrically is, it's actually, it's not too far apart. It's 6 degrees. It's starting to separate. But heliocentrically, it's really close. And so that Mars-Pluto conjunction, it does mean that, if you really want to assert yourself and demonstrate your strength, I think that you very much can. Sagittarius. We have the moon still in Virgo. And so, with the moon in Virgo making a sextile to Jupiter, remember Jupiter's your ruler, I think that today should be pretty good. I think that there's a lot you can accomplish, and if you've got any ambitions, then now might be a time when you can start to sort of get them off the ground. Okay, those ambitions could be anything. I'm not necessarily talking about earth-shattering ambitions, but just whatever you were planning on doing this week, you can really get it together. And that aspect between the moon and Jupiter should really help. And if you at the same time if you find yourself feeling a little bit negative and wondering how things are going to come together, maybe you have your doubts about other people, there is a biquintile between Venus and Jupiter. Venus and Jupiter are 144 degrees apart. Jupiter's your ruler. Venus is a fortunate planet. And so with that biquintile, you can, through an effort of will, you can create change. If you want other people to be more happy and more enthusiastic, then you can make it happen. And it may just be about just being a typical Sagittarian. You make a special effort to be a Sagittarian. What do I mean by that? Sagittarians at their best, have a reputation for being, enthusiastic and happy and perhaps rather noisy. That's a sort of textbook Sagittarian. And perhaps if you can be a textbook Sagittarian today, I'm not saying that's what you want to do. In fact, I don't think it is what you want to do. But if you make a special effort to be a textbook Sagittarian, your enthusiasm can, in the end, have an influence. And it's not necessarily completely chaotic, because I think it is planned. And through planning your enthusiasm, by planning, how you want to appear, that might be the key to it. It's not necessarily about inspiration, but it appears to be about inspiration, because people are looking for inspiration, and it's not available. Well, you can make it available. And so if you're able to create excitement and entertainment, then anything can happen. I mean, anything can happen. I mean that in a fortunate way. You can really start to move things. So I think that you shouldn't necessarily take things at face value. So things feel as if they're not moving, as if they're a bit stuck. It doesn't have to be like that. And so you are someone who right now can be in real control. And talking about organization, Uranus is going stationary direct, and I'm kind of trying to mention Uranus going stationary direct for all of the 12 signs. And so with Uranus going stationary direct, it can be about sort of insights, but insights about how you should be doing things. There's a right way of doing something, there's a wrong way. And perhaps, over the last few years, you've been trying to create for yourself the right set of routines. You've been trying to change things. You don't want to be tied to another person's routines or routines imposed upon you by society. Yeah, you do want to do things differently, but it's not always easy. And with Uranus going stationary direct, you perhaps see your opportunity. You see finally that you're doing something that you don't have to do. It's unnecessary. Maybe it worked in the past, but it's not working as well as it used to. And so if you haven't been able to break free from other people's imposed ideas, schedules, routines, if you haven't been able to break free, now might be your chance, and it just might become very clear to you, what needs to be done. And the moon in Virgo is starting to make a trine to Uranus. Okay, that moon trine Uranus might not be a sort of maximum power until tomorrow, but it's certainly beginning to make its influence as the day progresses. And so that moon trine Uranus may allow you to suddenly make the changes you always knew had to be enacted. So this might be your moment. Capricorn. There is a number of things going on today, which need to be mentioned. I mean, one thing is Uranus going stationary direct. Uranus is the planet of revolution. It's the planet of earthquakes, and it is coming to a standstill. So with Uranus coming to a standstill, you might be thinking about what it is that makes you different. Uranus likes to be different, and that's what Uranus is about. It's very unique. Uranus and unique both start with a U, don't they? Yeah, that's obvious, I know. But you think about that. What marks you out? And yet, sometimes, Capricorn, you might just be in denial about this uniqueness. There is just a modesty about Capricorns. They think they're nothing special. They don't like it when other people claim to be special, and they try to be consistent. But there are times when you need to be aware of what makes you special, what makes you different. And part of what makes you different is the fact that you just see things in a different way. Especially now with Uranus in Taurus. Uranus moving through Taurus. It's been moving through Taurus on and off for the last 7 years, and this is perhaps a time where it's all starting to culminate. And with Uranus going stationary direct, Capricorn, I think you can see it. You can see what marks you out. And, you don't want to create a fuss for the sake of it. You don't want to be a drama queen or a drama king. You don't want to do that. But at the same time, you've got to think about how special you are and where that specialness lies. And I think that this Uranus is now making it clear. You can see it in terms of how other people respond to you. You can see it in terms of what works for you. And over the next couple of months, as Uranus sort of moves through the last few degrees of Taurus, getting ready to move into Gemini, it really is a chance to bring that together. And as far as today is concerned, the moon is in Virgo, moon is in an earth sign, the moon is starting to make a trine to Uranus. So this can all be brought together, and it just becomes clear. It may almost be a vision of who you are and what you have got to contribute. And don't be shy about it, because Capricorn, at the moment, your ability to get on with people, to socialize, I think is pretty good. People will appreciate you, and you can make new connections, and you can particularly make new connections if you're prepared to show off who you are. It's not about your ego. It's about what you've been given, and if you demonstrate to the world what you've been given, everyone's going to love you for it. Aquarius. Some say that Uranus is your ruler, I do not say that Uranus is your ruler. As far as I'm concerned, Saturn is your ruler. Nonetheless, I'm prepared to accept that there is a kind of an association between Uranus and Aquarius, and this might mean that you are quite sensitive to its movement through the signs and the events in its geocentric cycle, for example, it going retrograde and direct. So what we have now is we have Uranus going stationary direct, and as an Aquarian, that might be important. So, Uranus has been, moving through Taurus on and off for some time, 7 years approximately. That's how long Uranus stays in each sign, on average. I mean, don't forget, it takes 84 years for Uranus to go through all the 12 signs. And so, with this Uranus going stationary direct, it may say something about your foundations and your security, and perhaps also about your home and family. So Aquarius, do think about your home, where you live, and how do you feel about it? Are you feeling, completely comfortable? Is everything fine? Or do you feel that maybe things could be better? And perhaps, over the last few years, this has been something that had been occurring to you, but something needs to be changed. Now, that doesn't mean to say that you have to leave where you're living, but maybe some changes are required in your home life, and perhaps there are things going on in your family also that need to be worked through. Again, I don't want to create a problem where none exists, but with Uranus going stationary direct, just consider the possibility that your home and family are in a state of flux, and that something needs to be done. Okay, it doesn't need to be done, but we're talking about your happiness and your well-being. And so, now might be a time to really sort of start to act on this. And, don't forget also Mercury is in Aquarius, and Mercury is starting to move towards a square of Uranus. So that's going to intensify that even more. I mean, I'll be talking about that Mercury square Uranus probably tomorrow. So now that Uranus is coming to a standstill, that means that the power of Uranus is really emphasized. And, it's right in front of you. And so if a change is required, it's obvious. It should be obvious now. And it's the kind of change that you don't have to do anything about it like right now, but just remember that, Uranus is right at the end of the sign, right at the end of Aquarius. And, soon enough it will be in Gemini. So over the next couple of months, work it out, and you have a chance to sort of institute changes which perhaps you had been delaying. Perhaps you've been delaying it for years. But with Uranus stationary direct, that's a great thing about a planet going stationary direct. It is because it's still, because it's completely still, it gets the attention it needs. And so if you want to make that change, then, go ahead. I mean, there is a potentially negative side to Uranus going stationary direct. It might mean that something happens in the home. Maybe it's an appliance. Maybe something, needs to be sorted out, or you need to think about, what could go wrong. I mean, I don't really know anything about sort of domestic appliances, but I don't know if the humidity is too high. Maybe the humidity needs to be reduced, because if the humidity gets too high, I think in certain situations boilers can leak. Or I'm not saying it's a water thing, but just think about what could go wrong in your home in terms of appliances, plumbing, electricity. It just may be something quite avoidable. So just kind of have a safety check, perhaps with Uranus stationary direct. Again, I'm not saying anything bad is going to happen, but we kind of have to use an abundance of caution. I mean, that's part of what these forecasts are all about, just thinking about, what could be happening. And aside from that, we do have a semi-square between the Sun and Neptune. The Sun is in Aquarius, after all, so that could be relevant, and Neptune has just gone into Aries. Now, Sun semi-square Neptune, that could mean that something gets misinterpreted or misunderstood. It could be that you get misunderstood. You're trying to present yourself in a particular way, and people don't entirely get it. They reach the wrong conclusions. Alternatively, Sun semi-square Neptune might be about another person who is confusing. They're confusing to you, maybe they're confusing to themselves. So if you are getting particularly close to any one person, don't take what they say at face value. It's not necessarily because they're being deliberately deceptive. They may not have a clue, and that just might be the way it is. So be careful with other people. They may not quite know what they're doing, and you have to perhaps show a bit of tolerance, and you certainly shouldn't take what people say at face value. But if you can deal with that ambiguity, Aquarius, I think your ability to relate to people is actually very good. I think that you can form new connections. Just if you do bring someone new into your life at whatever level, just don't necessarily take them at face value, because things might be just a little bit more complicated than they seem to be on the surface. Pisces. Uranus is stationary direct. Well, that's what I'm telling everyone, and one does have to consider what that means for the average Pisces. I mean, if it means anything at all. I mean, it might mean nothing, but with Uranus stationary direct, it might say something about your attitude to transport. I mean, I know that sounds ridiculously mundane. I mean, when I say transport, buses, cars, how you move from A to B, the journeys you take, and with Uranus going stationary direct, that could be about disruption. Or just something somewhere you go all the time, and you start to realize it's just not working. Perhaps it's taking too long, or you need to change your route, or it could say something about your car. I mean, with Uranus going stationary direct, Pisces, if you have a car or some other form of transport, then make sure it's in good working order. Don't take risks with it. Really think about what could go wrong. But it may also be something more conceptual when we're talking about transport. Because Uranus has been in Taurus for a long time, like 7 years, and maybe you need to think about how you have been getting from A to B. Have you been just following the same route, having the same attitude for the last few years? Maybe you've been, if you're working, maybe you've been commuting or whatever, and you suddenly think, well, that's not right. Perhaps you've been expending too much time and energy on your various journeys. But I know that sounds ridiculously specific. Uranus going stationary direct may just be about how you are expressing yourself, how you are getting your message across. And with Uranus stationary direct, you perhaps have a chance to be more dramatic. You've been trying to be dramatic, and you haven't always been successful. But now you might be finding your voice, especially as the moon is making a trine to Uranus. So the moon, okay, that trine is probably going to be tomorrow, but the moon in Virgo is making a trine to Uranus in Taurus. So perhaps Pisces, finally you're able to find the right words, and the words might be dramatic. They might be the kind of words that you don't necessarily want to express, but maybe the time is right. It is appropriate, perhaps. So that could be how moon trine Uranus works. And so Pisces, if you've got something to say, then now might be the time to say it. Particularly if it's something that you've been storing up, you've been building it up for the last few months, perhaps while Uranus has been retrograde, and you haven't had the chance. But maybe today, or more likely tomorrow, you will finally get your chance. And now I want to switch to the I Ching. So I asked the question, what is Wednesday going to be like for those watching the I Ching section of this video? And the first hexagram I got was hexagram number 16, which is contentment. Contentment. Well, this hexagram is called contentment by Greg Winkup in his translation of the I Ching. The Wilhelm translation of the I Ching calls it enthusiasm. And the problem with enthusiasm or contentment is that there's a certain complacency here. You just assume that everything is going to be fine. Or you just assume that, this is the way it is, and if you're happy now, then so what? I mean, that's enough. It's enough to perhaps be in the present and just be overly comfortable in the present. So you could say that there is an element of complacency here, and you think you've got it sorted out when maybe you haven't. And if you were to open your eyes, you would see that something is happening, or something is about to happen, that may undermine your contentment, that this contentment may be based on a false premise, on a premise which is based on nothing. And if you're honest with yourself, well, you would possibly accept that long-term things are not necessarily going to get better. And of course, I don't want to worry you too much. Remember, these hexagrams, I do them every day. So they are about today. It's not like some sort of mega disaster, or anything like that. But it's interesting that we're getting this hexagram with Uranus stationary direct. Uranus stationary direct, Uranus is the planet of events we weren't expecting. So with Uranus going stationary direct, we might think that everything is fine, but then something comes along and everything has to change. So that's a good reason not to be too complacent. Now, this hexagram, contentment, it does have 3 moving lines, and the bottom line moves. And with the bottom line moving, there is real complacency here. And this complacency could manifest in different ways. It could be just feeling good about yourself, almost to the point of arrogance, thinking you've sorted it out, and what's there to worry about? And in the process, maybe not taking yourself seriously enough. This may be a serious situation that you're taking it lightly, or you just think that you've got what it takes, and maybe you haven't. Then the 4th line moves. Now, 4th line is actually not such a bad line, and there is a suggestion here that maybe there's good reason to feel good about yourself. You can get other people enthusiastic with whatever it is you're doing. Remember, we've got Venus biquintile Jupiter. Venus biquintile Jupiter is a very enthusiastic aspect. It's about deciding that one's going to make oneself and everyone else feel happy and related to each other, and maybe you can get away with it. You can generate an overall feeling of contentment and enthusiasm. So that looks pretty good. But then we move to the 5th line. Now, 5th line, normally in I Ching, the 5th line is quite good. Now, this line is it is a bit weird. It's talking about illness, but it's talking about potentially an illness that works in our favor. It's saying, oh, we're ill. Because you're ill, you're not going to die. Now, what's the issue with that? I mean, that's I think the Wilhelm translation says that. Perhaps what it's saying is that with the illness, we're talking about complacency here. And if everything is fine, we would be running into trouble. But if you're ill, then there's a limit to what you can do. You can't climb Everest if you're feeling sick. So, you're on a base camp and you're about to kill yourself by climbing Everest, but you're feeling sick, you're feeling under the weather, you've got the flu. So the illness protects you. So by having an illness, and it's talking about chronic illness. By the way, I must make it clear, I don't think I'm talking about your own physical health here, but it's just that sickness and that incapacity prevents you from doing anything too dangerous. But if you weren't sick, then all sorts of things could happen, and so that is a way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it is to say that with the fifth line, you're feeling good, but it's all fake. It's not going anywhere. But I think there are these kind of two interpretations, and I think that it may be the saving grace here is your own discomfort. You just don't feel comfortable about something. You don't have 100% confidence, and it's good that you don't have 100% confidence, because if you did have 100% confidence, then you might be prepared to take that risk and get yourself into a situation that is difficult to get out of. Now, I've got 3 moving lines. That does mean that we move to a second hexagram, and that second hexagram is one we had quite recently, difficulty at the beginning. And under the circumstances, I think this is quite a good hexagram, because it doesn't say anything about the ending. It's not saying a difficult ending. And so what these 2 hexagrams together are talking about is a difficult situation developing. We hoped it wouldn't develop with that contentment. We assumed everything was going to be fine, but it soon becomes clear that it's not going to be fine at all. And we're in a situation that we are not happy about. And the question then is, what happens next? And, the I Ching, in a sense, doesn't go that far. It doesn't tell you what happens next. But if you've got a difficulty at the beginning, you probably start in the right place, because you realize that things aren't easy. And because you realize that things aren't easy, in the end, you're not going to take risks and you're not going to go too far. So that's possibly going to be the question at the end of the day. It's a situation, it's not perfect. It could be worse. And the question is, what kind of assistance are you going to get? Because I think in the end, assistance might be necessary, or you might be, you might have an inspiration. I mean, Uranus is going stationary direct, but I think the resolution to today is probably not going to manifest, and at least until tomorrow. I mean, I'd love to be more positive, but I don't think what I'm saying is so negative, and I think that there is a warning here. Don't be complacent. Don't rest on your laurels. Don't assume that everything is going to be fine. And if you see trouble on the horizon, be ready to do something about it. And I want to finish by looking at Uranus going stationary direct. That is the main event of the day. And so let's just start by looking at the chart of Uranus going stationary direct. Here, let's find it there, because it happens at a precise moment. And I think the precise moment is, in fact, 2:33:10. I looked at astro.com. If you haven't got an ephemeris, astro.com, you can download PDFs all of the planetary movements. And I think according to Astro.com, it's at 2:33:10 a.m. On February the 4th, London time, that Uranus comes to a standstill. And so how do we relate to this Uranus coming to a standstill? Now, it is absolutely possible that you don't feel it. I mean, this is Uranus. It's an outer planet. It's a transpersonal planet. You may not feel it at all. I mean, Uranus does go stationary direct, stationary retrograde. It does happen quite often. It's not an unusual event. And most people, they go through life and they just don't notice it. So you don't necessarily have to worry too much about Uranus going stationary direct. But, if we're thinking about what Uranus going stationary direct might be about, when you're dealing with, retrograde direct planets, I like to use the analogy, but I think it was the astrologer Stephen Arroyo used. I was reading when I was learning astrology in the 1980s. I did read a couple of his books. He was very readable, I think it was him who used the analogy of the candle flame. And the candle flame is that, if you've got a candle flame, if you pass your finger through a candle flame, you're not going to burn yourself. You can just, obviously, you just put your finger through it and it's not a problem. However, if you keep your finger in the candle flame, you are very soon going to have third-degree burns. You're going to lose your finger. I mean, obviously, you'll be in agony as well. And so that is a concept of Uranus going stationary direct. That when the Uranus is going stationary direct, it's like the finger in the candle flame. And so, whatever Uranus represents, it is completely magnified when it is stationary direct. And so that's perhaps how we should see it, and we should ask what is it about? Is there a difference between Uranus going stationary retrograde and stationary direct? You might see Uranus stationary direct as the moment where things start to unfold. Uranus stationary retrograde, perhaps we have a chance to go back over the past, but now stationary direct, this is it. This is now how things really are going to unfold, and we need to look at what Uranus is doing and what Uranus is about. Now, Uranus in Taurus, there are ways of looking at it. I'll tell you something about Uranus stationary direct. It just occurred to me. Taurus, I mean, this is probably just completely personal, not personal, but in terms of the city I'm in, maybe. But I live in a city where you have trees are important, and the Gary oak is a species of tree, which is a species of oak, which used to completely dominate the prairie in western Washington, and since the settlers came in, it's just been decimated. There's about there's like 5% left of the prairie, and it's just being cut down. Just because. And there is this Gary oak that's 900 years old. 900 years is in this city, and 900 years is a long time. You think about 900 years ago. That was before Genghis Khan. That was before the Magna Carta. That was before the European Renaissance. It was 600 years before 1776, before the birth of the Republic. And someone wants to cut it down. Why do they want to cut it down? For a parking lot. That's just. That is obscene at a level that one cannot realize. I mean, it's just, and so it hasn't happened yet. Probably will happen, unfortunately. Maybe not. I don't know. But there was a city council meeting yesterday, and there'd been some changes in the city council. The old mayor had gone. I think that the leadership of the city council has slightly changed. They don't have that strong leader anymore, and so people were perhaps more able to be more free, and you could see that people, I mean, there weren't that many people who made public comments, but people made public comments. I made my public comment by Zoom and so forth. Other people made their comments. And it seemed, when you looked at what the council members said at the end of a meeting, how they responded, because they don't respond when you ask questions. You make a public comment and they don't say anything. But then at the end of the video, because you can see it on YouTube, you could see what they were saying. And some of them seemed to be actually finally affected by it. One of them was saying, well, we didn't really realize when we had this rezoning, and maybe we should have thought about it more. And another council member saying, well, maybe this is that's saying that he empathized with the tree, and even that he would, if there was an appeal or a public hearing, that he said he would speak as a private individual. So what's all this got to do with Uranus in Taurus? Well, something seems to have changed. Taurus is, of course, the environment, and we're seeing devastation with the environment. You could say Uranus through Taurus. I'm not making any political point about Trump, but because I try to be neutral with Trump, but I cannot deal with Trump and the environment. I do not suffer from Trump derangement syndrome. I regard Trump largely as a force of nature. That's my opinion on Trump. But his attitude to the environment, he doesn't seem to care. And that could be Uranus in Taurus, one aspect of Uranus in Taurus. But there's perhaps a positive side to Uranus in Taurus. It's just Taurus. It's just as Uranus was going stationary direct. And this meeting was at 7 o'clock on a Monday. And Uranus on Monday the 2nd. And so you've got Uranus going stationary direct on 2 days later. So it may be, in terms of actually seeing that this city council was just aware of the environmental wreck that has been caused in this city, but with particular reference to these Gary oaks, Oregon white oaks. That's another name they can be called. Perhaps this is Uranus working its way through. So that is a way of looking at it, and I think there might be an environmental aspect to Uranus, to Uranus moving through Taurus. But whatever it is, Uranus is focusing on change, and it's whatever change needs to happen, it's going to happen. And again, continuing with America, you for example, the protests, against ICE. I'm not giving an opinion here. I'm not saying that the protesters are right or wrong, but you can see how Uranus going stationary direct, there might be protests. You can see that there have recently been sort of big protests in Prague. I don't know, I think against supporting the president. I think there's a quite possibility that these protests have been sort of bolstered by, the European Union, and of course the European Union doesn't like the new Prime Minister. He's Eurosceptic, and it's Prague. Prague is possibly not representative of the rest of the Czech Republic, but the people wherever you are angry, and perhaps Uranus stationary direct is just boosting this feeling of uncertainty, and not just uncertainty but rebellion, and people are just getting sick of it all. And so I think that's how it's seen. And don't forget that Uranus is stationary direct very close to Algol, or relatively close to Algol. It's certainly less than a degree from Algol. It's a really nasty fixed star. And over the next week, we're going to have Mercury and Uranus making squares to Uranus. So Mercury and Venus making squares to Uranus. So that's also something to be thinking about. They might be the triggers for further action. And what also has been happening while Uranus has been stationary direct is the Epstein files, and the Epstein files have been causing a bit of uncertainty with in the United States, the fact that I think Bill and Hillary Clinton have agreed to testify, but the real mess with the Epstein files is in the UK. I mean, it's with Peter Mandelson, he was business secretary during the economic crisis. He was giving information to Epstein. It's all coming out. So that may be another way in which Uranus stationary direct is working its way through. Now, this chart that you're seeing is Uranus stationary direct. I've set this for for London, for Westminster, and so at that precise moment where Uranus is stationary direct, it's on the descendant. So this is Uranus direct set for London, and I think that this really tells us that Uranus, I know one place that is really going to be hit, is the UK. We've got a by-election in a couple of weeks. That's when a member of Parliament had resigned, so we've got to put a replacement. So we have a separate election, and the government is likely to lose this election quite badly, and it's going to put a huge amount of pressure on Keir Starmer, and the people are certainly sort of restless. And the fact that you've got this man, Peter Mandelson, and it's his misdoings, his misdeeds are now completely clear. So I think that certainly Uranus stationary direct is going to have a really big impact on the UK, and we have to perhaps watch what happens in the UK when Mercury and Venus make squares to Uranus. And then a couple of people who might be influenced by Uranus going stationary direct. Let's see, who have we got? David Beckham, the former footballer, soccer player. Here is David Beckham. I'm not particularly interested in David Beckham. Can't help noticing he's been having arguments with his son. His son, I think, is called Brooklyn. And so he's been in the news perhaps for the wrong reasons. And David Beckham has Taurus rising. He's got Algol rising, 2754. So if he has got Uranus on his ascendant, maybe he's going to be in the news. Maybe something might happen to David Beckham. Maybe it's just something to do with his son, and his son gets in the news. I mean, he's trying to... David Beckham, I think he's just got a knighthood, hasn't he? He gets on well with the king. David Beckham is, to an extent, an establishment figure. He's become an establishment figure. He's got moon in Capricorn on the midheaven. I mean, that moon in Capricorn, there's a certain self-interest there, but that Uranus will be trine his moon. And of course, that new moon, the new moon we had a couple of weeks ago at 28 Capricorn, was right on his midheaven, right on his moon. I mean, is that connected to his knighthood, his new status? But it's also the fact that he's had this argument with his son. Maybe there's something else relating to David Beckham that might, for one reason or another, come out into the open. So other people, our friend Justin Trudeau. I must never forget about Justin Trudeau. I mean, I know he's not Canadian Prime Minister anymore, but Justin Trudeau does have his midheaven at 2717 Taurus. So he has got Uranus right on his midheaven. Now, could that be about some kind of revelation? Something comes out about him? Or is it just about his ambition, something he wants to do? Does he want to go back into politics? I mean, I don't know. I'm not Canadian. I don't follow Canadian politics. So if you are Canadian, perhaps you should ask yourself, what might it mean for Uranus to be stationary direct on Justin Trudeau's midheaven? And we have to consider, well, there are three people that I've talked about before who all have their Marses at 26 degrees Leo. So you've got three people who've got Uranus square their Mars. So one of these people is Donald Trump. So Donald Trump. So here's Donald Trump's chart. Donald Trump has his Mars at 26 degrees 47 Leo. He has got his ascendant at 29 degrees 58 Leo. So this means that Uranus is going to be stationary direct, square his Mars, and it's moving towards a square of his ascendant. So he has got Uranus moving on to his Mars ascendant midpoint, and I think that is perhaps quite an important square. So I think that Uranus stationary direct certainly going to have an impact on Trump, and I'll be coming back to that impact on Trump. But I just want to just look at a couple of other people who have it, and Benjamin Netanyahu has his Mars at 2645 Leo, so he's got his Mars kind of where in the same place as Trump. So Benjamin Netanyahu has got Uranus square his Mars. How is he going to respond to that? Is that going to be through military action? Is he going to be champing at the bit to attack Iran? Or is it going to be something about Israeli domestic politics? Or does he need to look after his own security? When you've got Uranus square your Mars, like with Trump, you do have to watch out. The US and Israel, a nation which have got a lot of guns flying, a lot of guns all over the place. So that's something that we need to look at. And the third person who has got her Mars at 26 degrees Leo is the British politician Angela Rayner. She was Deputy Prime Minister. She lost that position after she had some issue with not paying tax after the sale of a property. I think that's right. So she has got Mars conjunct the North Node. She's got Uranus going stationary direct on her Mars North Node midheaven. Now, Angela Rayner is she's got a sun in Aries. She's a very Aries person. She comes from a sort of working class background. She's a very good communicator, a lot better communicator from a Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, and she is very ambitious. And she is by and large on the left of the party. She has a lot of supporters. It's quite possible that if she makes a challenge for the leadership of the Labour Party against Keir Starmer, she could win through. So Angela Rayner could very well be Britain's next Prime Minister. And there's this kind of phrase, it's almost a cliche, that people use when talking about British politicians. People in the media, they like to use this phrase, on manoeuvre. So what they mean by on manoeuvre, if a politician is on manoeuvre or on manoeuvres, they are trying to improve their position. And Angela Rayner is very much on manoeuvres. She had this dinner apparently, and she's got with her certain potential backers, and she's been given £1 million. I know £1 million doesn't sound very much by American standards, but by British standards, if someone is trying to position themselves to take over from the existing Prime Minister, £1 million is regarded as being quite a lot of money. And so she is ambitious, and she has got Uranus square her Mars node midpoint. And so with Uranus square her Mars node midpoint, this Uranus going stationary direct is going to really push her into the limelight. I mean, she's already in the limelight. She is kind of she had kind of withdrew after she lost the position of Deputy Prime Minister, but now she's coming back in, and I think that Uranus is going to really push her out. And don't forget, she's got in her natal chart, she's got Mars square Uranus, North Node square Uranus. So I think that Angela Rayner, she already is getting more increasing amount of attention, but I think that attention is going to intensify. By the way, Uranus on the Mars node midpoint, I thought I'd just quickly see what Reinhold Ebertin said in the combination of stellar influences, and he says about it, he says Uranus on it, he says active cooperation, an organizing activity or occupation, sudden unions and associations, sudden experiences shared together, an upset or an excitement in an organization or within a community. Well, I think that pretty much sums up Angela Rayner and what she's planning on doing. So she is very much someone to watch. Now, going back to Donald Trump, there are people who kind of share some of his planetary energies, and there is, of course, his wife, Melania. We don't have a time of birth for Melania, but Melania does have her Venus at 28 degrees Taurus. So that means that Donald's Mars is square her Venus. That's a problem synastry. I mean, that really is a problem. I'll tell you what the problem with that is that, Venus in Taurus is, very much, what Melania, it's Melania's aesthetics, what she finds to be harmonious, beautiful, and attractive. It could be, you could see it like that. And Trump's Mars, her husband's Mars at 26 degrees Leo, that might indicate that, it certainly indicates a sexual chemistry, for sure. I mean, that they are linked together. But the question is, is it about attraction or is it about repulsion? And one wonders what Melania really thinks about Trump, how she responds to him. So I think that, and so we've got Uranus on Melania's Venus at the same time as Uranus is square her husband's Mars. So that piece of synastry, that Venus-Mars synastry between Melania and Donald is really heightened by Uranus, and it's going to be heightened even more over the next few days when Mercury and Venus make the squares to Uranus. And another person who is associated with Trump is, of course, his vice president, J.D. Vance. So here's J.D. Vance's horoscope. And, J.D. Vance has his ascendant at 27 degrees Leo. So Uranus is going to be square his ascendant at the same time as it's square Trump's Mars and ascendant. So the link between J.D. Vance and Trump is really emphasized by Uranus. And I wonder how J.D. Vance and Trump are going to be getting on over the next couple of, over the next month or two. And, I always thought that the problem with J.D. Vance as a pick is that there might be a clash in the end between the two men. And by the way, I don't suffer from Trump derangement syndrome. I don't suffer from Vance derangement syndrome either. I don't actually. I care. One can argue about J.D. Vance's politics, but I don't know. I don't think he. I think he personally. I think he comes over as being quite effective, and I don't see why so many people have a problem with Vance. I think probably the people who are critical of Vance are probably the ones who would never vote for him anyway. I think he still has to be the favourite to be the next president. And of course, he could be a next president sooner than some people think. So, I'm not saying making any predictions there, but Uranus is exposing a fault line. Uranus going stationary direct is exposing a fault line between J.D. Vance and Trump. Are we going to see it? Are we going to know what's going to happen? Trouble like Trump. Trump could be quite critical of Vance in public. He could. He's quite capable of doing that. Trump is quite open and honest in his own way. So there is the linkage between Trump and his wife and J.D. Vance. They we need to perhaps look at that, and maybe Trump with Uranus square his ascendant, square his Mars, he could perhaps be more abrasive than usual. Anyway, that's it. That's all I'm going to say about the subject of Uranus going stationary direct. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed this video, I'd be very grateful if you were to like it. If you're not subscribed, super grateful if you were to subscribe. If you want to buy me a coffee, there's a link in the description, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.